Okay, we've got about 5 minutes. I would love for us to comment because you had posted this. I just thought it was interesting. I have all the respect in the world for Joel Klatt. I believe you do as well. But he had posted this concerning the various atmospheres in the Big Ten. And Joel Klatt's top 5 atmospheres in the conference stand like that. Let me pull down this banner so we can see number 5. All right. So Joel Klatt, of course, knows his stuff and knows football on the field as well as anyone. But those are the top 5 Big Ten atmospheres. So when I think atmosphere, of course, number one, I'm thinking about the volume of the crowd. How rabid is the crowd to make it difficult for the other team to hear signals and snaps and communicate, because you want to create a home field advantage. So I'm not thinking about he's rating tailgating at Big Ten stadiums.
Right.
It's more about the game atmosphere inside the stadium. And my only exception to this, first of all, Michigan, despite having the largest stadium in America, and they have for a long, long time, and as soon as Ohio State bumps theirs up, they continue to bump it up. And man, shoot, when I was 15 years old, those stadium rankings were number 1 and number 2, and they were in the low 90s. And now Michigan's up to like 112, and Ohio State's sitting around 111. So they just keep cramming people in these places. But Michigan's very much known as a wine and cheese kind of crowd. Like, it's not the most raucous stadium. That's not the reputation. Now, Michigan fans will tell you that the stadium is built in such a way that the noise rises out of the stadium and is not
But that doesn't do
in the stadium.
It's a big bowl. It's a big, wide bowl. But what does that do for, well, again, assuming Joel Klatt is rating atmosphere as it affects gameplay, signal calling, etc. I know there's some people who get really angry because whenever I say anything as a slight against Michigan, this ain't a slight against Michigan, it's a slight against Joel Klatt. But like, that's the sore thumb on this list. Are you kidding me? I'm assuming he just had Michigan in his top 5 because they hold so many people in the Big House. I'm assuming but to me, that's just almost a dumb thing to say, especially as a former Ohio State quarterback. Or excuse me, I'm confusing him and Herb Street. Former Buffalo quarterback, but he's a quarterback nonetheless who's called a lot of Big 12 games. Or Big 10 games. I'm surprised he's got Oregon and Washington. I just, like, every player that you ever hear from brings up Kinnick in that conversation. That's my only thing. I haven't been to all these stadiums. I've been to Outson. That's the only one I've actually been to, and partly due to proximity. I mean, all those other stadiums are quite a ways away from me. But like, in general, I can't imagine Iowa's not a tougher atmosphere to play in, especially when you have the testimony of so many players from past years. And Iowa's, again, they're built that way. I'm not saying it's just the fans. They don't have as many fans as a Michigan, but they're right on top of you. They're right on top of the field. And Iowa fans are passionate. Give them credit.
I also think he's being swayed by the strength of the teams. I think that's influencing him, I'm guessing. Also, I'm going to take exception with Washington. I would put Iowa not necessarily just at number 5. They would be in the top 5. I would consider them possibly higher than number 5, but I would displace Washington. So this is what I know about Washington. I've never been to Husky Stadium in Seattle, but when they're good and when there is a purpose for the fans to show up and pack it out and be raucous, they're there, and it's a difficult place to play. However, they're not going through 7-5 seasons like Iowa has and still showing up, and you really can't tell, okay, is this team 7-5 or are they 11-1? That is my experience with Washington. Again, not firsthand experience, but knowing from watching on television and knowing, okay, there's the stadium's half full. So they're not showing up when they're not good. So Iowa fans show up, and Wisconsin, they have a gripe here as well. And shoot, how about Nebraska? There's actually a few different candidates here.
Absolutely. Nebraska would have a say in this. How about Indiana?
Huh?
I'm just kidding, of course. But the Coliseum, if we're going to put Michigan there, then put the Coliseum on there. I mean, just because you hold a bunch of people and it's a storied program does not mean they're one of the best environments. I
Well,
think
Michigan,
Nebraska, absolutely.
I'm sorry, Michigan fills the stadium. USC fills their stadium when they're good. When they're not good,
Good. But
it's a
that's good.
fair weather fan base.
What's the difference between does Washington fill their stadium?
No, that was my point about
Yeah,
Washington.
exactly.
They do not.
Yeah, and Nebraska fills their stadium like no matter what. Now there's some controversy about how they've done that, but yeah. So I would again I feel bad really criticizing this, but my top based on what I have heard and seen on television, I would have to think Penn State's number one. I would probably go with Ohio State at 2. I'd probably go with Iowa at 3. And I guess Oregon. I mean, I've it's been a while since I've been out there, and I hope to make it out there for. It's a great. I love Eugene. Like just the experience of being out for a football game in Eugene is awesome. And then I don't know for number 5. I think Nebraska. Honestly, I think I'd put Nebraska over Michigan and Washington, but maybe I'm just trying to ruffle the maize and blue.
You have been to Autzen Stadium?
I have one time, 2000. Let's see. We were on vacation out there, 2019. And for the record, I do have family out there. So when Iowa they don't get to go there this year, which is thank your lucky stars, because I think Oregon's maybe pretty darn good. I would love to go back out there. In fact, one of my favorite musicians played at the spring game. Matt Carney is from Eugene, and I heard he did a post-spring game concert. That would have been an awesome trip to take, but alas, some good. No question about it. I think this Pac-12 to Big Ten, almost what you call a merger, is it's going to bring some interesting environments and kickoff times and all that. Do you want to real quickly before we say goodbye to everybody, your reaction to a couple of the big noon kickoffs that were announced yesterday? One of which being Alabama and Wisconsin. I saw somebody in the Iowa realm kind of poking fun at Wisconsin, saying that poor student section, because they're kind of known for filling the student section really late. I know there was a tragedy there years ago, and that's allegedly why they have to bring in all the students single file in a certain way. I know when I went to the Iowa-Wisconsin game, and that game was like a late afternoon game, it took forever for that student section to fill, and that was a big game. So for an 11 a.m. kick, it'll be interesting to see what the student section looks like. But nevertheless, great Big Ten SEC game early.
I am just happy that Alabama is actually traveling to play an out-of-conference game because, number one, they went 10 or 12 years without traveling to anywhere except for an NFL stadium for a neutral site game. Didn't go anywhere else. And then they went to Austin, Texas 2 seasons ago. That was their first time traveling anywhere since they went to Penn State in 2011. So this is their first trip north since 2011 to take on Penn State.
Can Wisconsin beat them?
Sure, they can. It's maybe a 10 or 15%.
Okay. Has Alabama ever been on Big Noon kickoff? Is that a dumb question?
They were on the Big Noon kickoff against Texas 2 years ago in Austin.
Okay. That was a good game. That was correct me if I'm wrong, that was the Purdue guy.
Yes, Hudson Card had to play that game. Last second field goal. Bryce Young pulled off a miracle play, dodged a guy, ran like 50 yards to set him up for a field goal.